When they dismiss cases like that, they don't think it's political. They think it's just the default position. When they say to us that the Constitution must be interpreted in the moment, you know, the Babri Masjid was a great tragedy, but it must be interpreted in the contemporary moment. That's not politics. That's the default position. When they say about Gyanvyapi, what they have said about Gyanvyapi, not politics. अगर आप हाई कोर्ट के कैंटीन में या सुप्रीम कोर्ट के कैंटीन में वक्त गुजारें, so in a day or two you're bound to hear this about certain lawyers कि अरे वो ऐसे ही हैं, वो एक्टिविस्ट हैं, अरे वो लॉ नहीं करते हैं, वो पॉलिटिक्स करते हैं. Even in the courts, a lot of times the judges say to us कि don't go there, don't make your argument political, stick to the law. You hear this everywhere. You hear this on TV channels कि आप तो politicize कर रहे हैं मामले को. Ironically, you even hear this in the political arena कि कांग्रेस खाकी पैंट्स क्यों जला रही है, वो तो politicize कर रही है. And I've been asking myself, what does it mean to not politicize an issue in court? What does it mean to be political or not political in the courts? And I remember I've now unearthed this book which I had got when I was a young law student. Patli si kitab hai, Introduction to Political Philosophy. And the book says that politics basically asks only two questions. The first question is, who gets what? And the second question is, says who? तो पहला सवाल है कि जितनी भी रिसोर्सेज हैं, मटीरियल रिसोर्सेज हैं, हाउ आर दे डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड इन सोसाइटी? आर दे ट्रीटेड एज पब्लिक गुड्स? राशन, एजुकेशन, हेल्थ, आर दे ट्रीटेड एज पब्लिक गुड्स? Or only those people, apparently those 4% of the population that pays income tax, has any kind of moral claim to these resources? That is a political question. The other political question is, am I as a citizen entitled by right to claim these public goods? Or do I have to be a labharthi? If I comply with the duties that have been assigned to me, is it up to the government of the day and government largesse to either give me those goods or not give me those goods? These are all political questions. And these are all cases that come to court. Are public goods freebies or are they your rights? So in a context like that, I ask myself often, how do you escape political questions in a court of law? How do you stay away from political questions? And it's not just about material goods. It's also about distribution of liberty, distribution of rights. I'll give you an example from just last week. इत्तेफाक से ये हुआ पिछले हफ्ते कि 2 इम्पॉर्टेंट केसेस एक साथ कोर्ट में आए. पहला मामला था कर्नाटका की ईदगाह का. वो 4 बज रहा था और लिस्टेड थी कि ईदगाह, कर्नाटका में जो ईदगाह है उसमें गणेश चतुर्थी की पूजा होनी चाहिए या नहीं होनी चाहिए. और उसी वक्त एक बहुत सीनियर एक्टिविस्ट हैं जो कि अब शायद 2 महीने से जेल में हैं, उनकी बेल लगी. और चूँकि दोनों बहुत बड़े मैटर्स थे तो दोनों में वकील जो थे वो एक ही थे. स्टेट की तरफ से जो उनके मोस्ट सीनियर लॉ ऑफिसर्स हैं वो दोनों केसेस में पेश हो रहे थे, और दूसरी तरफ से भी a very respected, a very senior private lawyer was going to appear. So the private lawyer said to the court that if I have to make a choice, I'll argue the liberty matter, I'll argue the bail matter, I'll hand over the Eidgah matter to another colleague. But the state objected, and the law officer of the state said, no, I have to deal with both matters. So kindly adjourn liberty to next week. I can't deal with liberty right now. I have to attend to property matters. So liberty was adjourned, and he appeared in the matter of the Eidgah, which is basically a property matter. This is a political question also. He made a political choice, not for himself, but on behalf of the whole state. And he prioritized property over liberty. How do you get away from choices like these in a court of law? And now the second question. Who gets what and who decides? And I would argue that who gets what is always decided by people who hold political power. And sometimes people who hold political power defer to the constitution. They say कि भाई constitution को decide करने दीजिए कि किसको क्या मिलेगा. Affirmative action can be a basis. Minority rights could be a basis. But at other times, people who hold political power don't defer to the constitution. They defer only to majoritarian sentiments. They say कि हमारे पास ताकत है, हम उस बेसिस पर डिसाइड करेंगे कि किसको क्या मिले और किसको क्या नहीं मिले. So therefore, politics to my mind is about the business of changing this equation. This equation, this status quo that is forever deciding who gets what. I remember this story from when I was a child, also from when I was an adult, and it's the story of Oliver Twist. And I'm sure everyone has read this story of Oliver Twist, about this orphan boy जो कि एक यतीम खाने में पल रहा था, और उस यतीम खाने में जो लड़के थे उनको कभी पूरा खाना नहीं मिलता था. खाना होता था, खाना पकता था, खाना एक कोने में रखा होता था, मगर जब मास्टर साहब उसको सर्व करते थे, he'd never give anything more to the boys than was absolutely essential for bare existence. तो लड़कों को हमेशा भूख लगी होती थी. तो एक दिन ऑलिवर ट्विस्ट जो थे उनको बाकी लड़कों ने चढ़ाया कि तुम आज और मांगना, आज मास्टर साहब से और मांगना. और वो सीन याद है हमको कि वो अपना 2 खतरा शोरबा ख़त्म करता है और उसके बाद वो कटोरा लेके जाता है मास्टर के पास और कहता है कि सर मे आई हैव सम मोर. एंड एवरीथिंग कम्स टू अ स्टैंड स्टिल. सर मे आई हैव सम मोर. एंड द मास्टर्स आईज पॉप अप एंड ही सेज व्हाट, एंड दिस बॉय सेज सर मे आई हैव सम मोर. और मास्टर उसको लेडल से एक लगाता है सर पे. एंड देन ही सॉर्ट ऑफ बीटन अप एंड द मास्टर इज लुकिंग अराउंड. कुक से कह रहा है, अपने सर्वर से कह रहा है कि इसकी हिम्मत देखो, इसकी मजाल देखो, एक तो इसको खाना देते हैं हम लोग और ऊपर से और मांग रहा है. एंड देन द नेक्स्ट डे ही इज प्रोड्यूस्ड बिफोर द बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स ऑफ द ऑर्फनेज, एंड द डायरेक्टर्स से दैट दिस बॉय इज अ ट्रबल मेकर and he will get into trouble and take it from us that he'll be hanged one day. And then he's put into solitary confinement. Now, this to me is a political act. What Oliver Twist did is politics. But equally what they did to Oliver Twist is also politics. So politics is always about trying to strike a balance. The ones who don't have power, the ones who don't have access to resources, are always trying to shift that balance to disturb the power. And the people who have that power already are always trying to obstruct. They're always telling you that you are conflict entrepreneurs. They are telling you that you are anti-nationals. They are telling you that you are urban Naxals, which is really a term devoid of any meaning. What does it even mean to be an urban Naxal? But this is discursive obstruction of any kind of politics. So therefore, politics is the consciousness that something is wrong, that something is not fair. And then politics is a discursive activity when you try and get other people on your side and explain to them why you think things are not right. And then you mobilize and you want to change things. That is the essence of politics. That is the essence of your political democratic right in society. And politics is equally the business of obstructing change, to not let status quo change. So forever calling politics as chaotic or as anarchic or violent or anti-national. Now coming back to the courts, when they say to people like us in the courts that keep politics away, the assumption is that what happens every day is not political. Only those cases are political that disturb power. The default position is not politics at all. So every day when the courts say to us that really this is a matter of policy, migrant laborers mar gaye COVID mein, that's a matter of policy. You go back and you agitate with the government. When they dismiss cases like that, they don't think it's political. They think it's just the default position. When they say to us that the constitution must be interpreted in the moment, you know, the Babri Masjid was a great tragedy, but it must be interpreted in the contemporary moment. That's not politics. That's the default position. When they say about Gyanvyapi, what they have said about Gyanvyapi, not politics, default position. When they encourage, there is a particular gentleman in the Supreme Court, he loves to file PILs, a PIL a day, and his pet subject is uniformity. He wants uniformity of laws, uniformity of divorce laws, uniformity of curriculum, uniformity of what is sung at school. So that's his thing, uniformity. He files a PIL every day. Notice is issued every day on those PILs. To me, these PILs are deeply political because they're completely deadening any sense of any alternative consciousness, right? Everything has to be similar, uniform, homogeneous. But these PILs are never looked at as being political. They are par for the course. Politics is when you question, politics is when you disturb. And now, coming back to the infamous FIR 59 of 2020, it's nothing if not political. I'll read out bits from the FIR. It says, we believe that, they used CAA protests to mobilize masses against the government of the day, to internationally further the propaganda that minorities in India are oppressed. Now, it's unusual for an FIR to denounce something, especially if it is a political claim, as propaganda. It's not the FIR's business to decide if something is propaganda or not propaganda. The FIR has to name a crime. FIR 59 of 2020 does not name an offense. It names a propaganda. It says you are mobilizing, you are creating a propaganda. That is a political right of the people who are doing that, to mobilize and to argue that there is something wrong with the way things are going on is a democratic right. It is not an offense. So to me, FIR 59 of 2020 is a political document. There is no offense that has been named there. The FIR is not framed in terms of a breach of peace. It is framed in terms of a political conspiracy alone. It says that you're conspiring politically to dislodge the government. There is no mention of violence. There's no mention of who's actually committed that violence. It is purely a political document. Likewise, in his bail hearing, the state's response, the state's counter, was purely political. There was no element of legalese in it. The state basically said, and decipher it if you can, because I haven't found it easy. The state said other protesters were brought in to provide a secular cover, an agenda cover, and a media cover, but really it was only a Muslim critical mass. This is what the state has to say in opposition to Umar Khalid's bail application. That really you were creating a Muslim critical mass, but you were covering it by using secular language and gendered language and media language, whatever that means. Now, even if he were doing that, even if he were creating a purely Muslim critical mass, that is politics. That is his political right. That is his democratic right. He is obviously trying to disturb the status quo because he is not comfortable with it. That is what politics is all about. Here, though, the chain of events is such that nobody, least of all the state, is very clear about where the violence emanated from. So therefore, the responsibility for the violence, even by those who were counter-mobilized, is on the protesters. आपने क्यों मोबिलाइज़ किया, आपने मोबिलाइज़ किया तो उनको गुस्सा आया तो आप पिटे. So going back to Oliver Twist, it's a bit like the master saying, he's asking me for more food. Look at what he's doing. He's causing my blood pressure to rise. He's causing harm to me. And then Oliver Twist being slapped left and right for causing discomfort to the master. It's exactly like that. And it's not just Umar Khalid's case. Asif ke case mein, Natasha ke case mein, same argument. The charge against them was they campaigned in Muslim areas. They went to mosques and campaigned with Muslim imams. It's bizarre, this allegation. In a democratic country, to say to someone that the charge against you is that you're mobilizing is frankly bizarre. And they get away with it only because there's this shadow of the partition, which implies that Muslims getting together is not a good idea. So, and then again, there's the shadow of 9/11, which implies that Muslims getting together leads to terror attacks. They don't even have to name it. They don't even have to say it. They only have to say, well, they're mobilizing Muslims, be careful. And that in itself is now being treated as an offense. Zubair ke case mein, the state had this to say. An offensive speech was given at Sitapur by Bajrang Muni to his followers on April 2nd. And the state admits that it's an offensive speech. Then the state says it was a speech about raping women of a particular community. The state says this. And then the state says about Zubair, but the accused made the speech viral on April 7th, causing communal tension. This is the state's case against Zubair. The state's case against Siddiqui Kappan is that he was trying to tell the Dalit community that they must demand justice. This is what the state had to say in a court of law. These are not legal arguments. These are purely political arguments, and I might add, these are very dubious political arguments being made by the best law officers in the Supreme Court. Now, on the other hand, the Supreme Court, not the Supreme Court, us, India, does not recognize the concept of political prisoners. We can't, because we're a democracy. So if we legally recognize the idea of political prisoners, that would go against the grain of who we are. It can't be democratic to have political prisoners. So we don't recognize political prisoners, even though the arguments are purely political, even though the reasons for these people being in jail is purely political. So therefore, what does the court do? The court, when it can, they do what they can, when they can, release Tista here, release Zubair there, release Asif here, partly release Siddiqui. But I wish the courts would do more than that. I wish the courts would call this out, call out the bluff of the state, and tell the state to not do politics in the courts, the same way that they tell the defense lawyers to not do politics in courts. And I wish the courts would recognize that the arrests are basically just systemic pro-establishment politics. They're systemic pro-establishment politics, and they're structured harassment of dissenters. That's what they are. And to conclude, I read this beautiful letter by Umar today in The Wire, and I was reminded of Fehmida Riaz and a couple of stanzas from one of her poems, and I'll read that out to you and then I'll conclude. हिसारे जिंदा में हल्का जन थी तमाम शब संतरी की हैरत कि बंद कमरों में अज़्म जुर्रत दराए कैसे बिला इजाज़त. For nights on end, the guards have been baffled. How do courage and determination find their way into the prisoner's cell without prior permission from the authorities and despite our constant watch? अजीब और हैरान कुन हैं कितने अज़ियतों के जदीद आले, अजीब तर मुश्त क़ल्ब इंसान कि जो संभालों पे है संभाले. Strange and surprising are the modern instruments of torture, but stranger still and more miraculous is the defenseless heart that recovers each time, returns just when it has been pushed to the brink. And last of all, तवील है क़िस्सा-ए सितमगर, तवील तर खल्क़ की कहानी, जहाँ पे वो ख़त्म शुद कहेंगे वहीं से कहते हैं हम ज़बानी। बहुत लंबी है द प्रैक्टिसेस ऑफ ऑप्रेशन, मगर उससे और ज़्यादा लंबी है द स्टोरी ऑफ द पीपल, एंड दे विल गेट टायर्ड एंड दे विल स्टॉप एट सम पॉइंट। दैट्स व्हेन वी विल स्टिल कंटिन्यू। थैंक यू।
खबरों में बने रहने के लिए फोरम 4 को सब्सक्राइब करें और नोटिफिकेशन पाने के लिए बेल आइकन दबाएं।